So this morning in writing, our big idea is that writers include the use of inner voice so that readers can understand the author's inner thoughts, emotions, and conflicts. What that means is sometimes writers can use their voice or can talk in a character's voice when they write with dialogue, which means they have quotations. That's what the character actually said in the story, and they can show voice that way. But they can also show voice through thinking, their thoughts, like their wonderings. I know one of my groups was reading The Whipping Boy, and Jemmy was always thinking out loud, but he was never really speaking. Remember we talked about that? So the author was showing Jemmy's inner thoughts without having him actually speak in the story. A writer can also show emotions. Now, we're all writing our memoirs, so for us, the characters that we would be writing about for emotions would be ourselves. We could share our emotions from that memory that we have. If you were writing a realistic fiction, you could be showing one of the characters' emotions. And then conflicts. We all have a conflict in our memoir that we're working on. And we can show that inner conflict, maybe that we had with our memory. I know, Geneva, with your tongue stuck on the pole in the ice, you could really talk about some inner conflict while you were waiting for your mom to get back with the water. What was going through Geneva's head? What was the conflict she's having? Oh, I'm stuck, realizing this, and how could you say that in a really thoughtful, creative way and show your inner voice that way? Does that make sense? So instead of us telling, we've been working on this a lot, instead of us just telling fact after fact in our memoirs, we can tell it in a way that shows our inner thoughts, our inner emotions, and our inner conflicts that we were feeling. So we kind of have our thought bubble and see our emotions guys, and then our little conflict guy. It's kind of covered up there, but. So I'm going to read a little memoir to you from one of my favorite authors, Cynthia Ryland. Did we do a writer's talk on her yet?
No.
I don't think we did yet because I can't find a good one. So I'm going to have to make my own for her. I want you to be listening for the emotion that she puts in here with her voice. It's a memoir. And I also want you to be listening for any thoughts, any thinking that she was doing, and any conflicts that you notice. It's called When I Was Young in the Mountains. And it's literally about her when she was young in the mountains. There's no surprise there. When I was young in the mountains, Grandfather came home in the evening, covered with the black dust of a coal mine. Only his lips were clean, and he used them to kiss the top of my head. When I was young in the mountains, Grandfather spread the table with hot cornbread, pinto beans, and fried okra. Later, in the middle of the night, she walked through the grass with me to the Johnny house and held my hand in the dark. What are Johnny houses? Outside bathroom. I promised never to eat more than one serving of okra again. Get it? So she didn't just say, I was really sick, my stomach really hurt. She said it in a way that was very creative and showed her inner voice. When I was young in the mountains, we walked across the cow pasture and through the woods, carrying our towels. The swimming hole was dark and muddy, and we sometimes saw snakes, but we jumped in anyway. On our way home, we stopped at Mr. Crawford's for a mound of white butter. Mr. Crawford and Mrs. Crawford looked alike and always smelled of sweet milk. When I was young in the mountains, we pumped pails of water from the well at the bottom of the hill and heated the water to fill round tin tubs for our baths. Afterward, we stood in front of the old black stove, shivering and giggling while Grandmother heated cocoa on top. Notice how she repeats this line. When I was young in the mountains, we went to church in the schoolhouse on Sundays, and sometimes we walked with the congregation through the cow pasture to the dark swimming hole for baptisms. My cousin Peter was laid back into the water, and his white shirt stuck to him, and my grandmother cried. When I was young in the mountains, we listened to frogs sing at dusk and awoke to cowbells outside our windows. Sometimes a black snake came in the yard, and my grandmother would threaten it with a hoe. If it did not leave, she used the hoe to kill it. 4 of us once draped a very long snake, dead of course, across our necks for a photograph. When I was young in the mountains, we sat on the porch swing in the evenings, and grandfather sharpened my pencils with his pocket knife. Grandmother sometimes shelled beans and sometimes braided my hair. The dogs lay around us, and the stars sparkled in the sky. A bobwhite whistled in the forest. Bob, bob, bobwhite. When I was young in the mountains, I never wanted to go to the ocean, and I never wanted to go to the desert. I never wanted to go anywhere else in the world, for I was in the mountains, and that was always enough. So Cynthia had lots of emotion and inner thought in her story. I picked a couple lines that I thought were really good, that really were great examples of how she used her inner voice. And we're going to go through these, and we're just going to put a check which one we think she used. Was it her inner thoughts, her emotions, or her conflicts? So here's one line. Afterward, we stood in front of the old black stove, shivering and giggling while grandmother heated cocoa on top. Does that sound like a conflict she was having? Does it sound like some emotions she was having?
Yeah.
What about her thinking? Was it showing what she was thinking? Mm-hmm. So I think maybe we could mark, it definitely wasn't conflict, was it? But a little bit of both of those. I mean, giggling, you could tell she was in a good mood, right? So that's kind of an emotion. What about the next one? My cousin Peter was laid back into the water and his white shirt stuck to him, and my grandmother cried. Which one really pops out to you there? Tell someone next to you which one you think stands out the most and why. What do you think, Geneva?
Grandma cried.
What was your evidence?
Because grandmother got into the water, his white shirt and stuck to grandmother.
Oh, thank you, girls. Paige, what did you guys say?
We said emotions.
Did anyone else say emotions? Lots of people. What was your evidence for saying emotion?
Well, when she said that her grandmother cried, and it really had that content that kind of warms your heart.
Yeah, you could really feel the warming there. So right here, when she said her grandmother cried, that really made you think of emotion. Good. Did anyone say a different one? Yeah. McKenna, what did you guys say?
We said that, conflict.
Conflict. Okay, why?
When the grandmother cried. I didn't really get the sentence, but I think it's conflict.
Well, you bring up a good point, McKenna, because if we didn't know the whole story, this would sound kind of scary, wouldn't it? Because we wouldn't know the whole context of what they're doing. My cousin Peter was laid back into the water and his white shirt stuck to him, and my grandmother cried. If we didn't know really that he was actually getting baptized, we might think something really bad happened, right, McKenna? So we have to remember what was going on in the story for this one. Because if we didn't know that he was getting baptized, I mean, he goes into the water and comes right back out. It's a baptism, it's a happy thing. She wasn't crying because she was sad that he was getting injured or that he had passed away or something, because it kind of sounds like that, doesn't it? If you didn't know what happened in the story. But because we know that he was getting baptized, I think she was crying because she was proud and happy that he was being baptized. Does that change what you think, McKenna?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because at first I thought he was dying.
Right, and I would think that too, Lena, that maybe he was dying if I didn't know the whole story. But I know the whole story, so I know she was still showing emotion, but it was a good cry. You know how you have a cry when you're happy sometimes? What about the next one? Sometimes a black snake would come into the yard and my grandmother would threaten it with a hoe. Talk to somebody about that one.
Conflict.
I heard like 23 of the same word. What is it, everybody?
Conflict.
Yeah. Who can tell me why it was conflict? Hallie. Oh, let's listen to Hallie, Sam.
Because when it said my mother would threaten it with a hoe.
Right here?
Yeah.
That's where you saw your evidence? Yeah. Well, and I think the whole thing, when it comes into the yard, that's dangerous, right? That's a situation where you have a major conflict there. And we have one more. I never wanted to go anywhere else in the world, for I was in the mountains, and that was always enough. McKenna, you said inner thoughts. Why do you say inner thoughts?
Because she said, I never wanted to go anywhere else in the world because nothing was good enough for her and she didn't want to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And those are her thoughts. That's what she's thinking.
That some other people might want to go.
But so, yeah, exactly. Some people might want to be at, like, I would never want to go anywhere else but the ocean. That's just me, because I lived by the ocean. But for her, she lived by the mountains, and that's, I would agree with you. Trevor?
I think emotion.
Good, yeah? Why?
Because she really wants to stay there and she just doesn't want to be anywhere else but there.
She has strong feelings. And anytime we have strong feelings about something, Ethan, whether they're good feelings or bad feelings or mixed feelings, when we have strong feelings about something, we can write about that in our writing and show our emotion. All of you writing, I agree, Trevor, I need to mark that. I don't think it's a conflict. If someone was making her go to the ocean, then it might have been a conflict. But she's not being forced to go anywhere, so I don't think it's a conflict that she's showing. But when you're writing your memoirs, you chose, everyone got to choose their own topic. And what you chose, you have strong emotion for, I would think. Because you wouldn't choose it otherwise. It'd be boring for you to write if you didn't have strong emotion. So when you're working on revising today, today's one of our last days to revise. When you're working on revising, see if you can find some places where you could add some inner voice to your writing. And before I send you off, we're going to do one more thing. Everyone's pretty much heard everyone's story. For the most part, we've been doing a lot of sharing. So even if it's at the first rough draft we heard or not, we kind of all know what everyone's topic is in our memoirs. I want you to talk to somebody next to you and tell them what your plan is for today and what you could do to add some inner voice in your writing. What are you going to do? Tell somebody next to you before we go.
I probably get
Be specific. It's gotten kind of quiet. You should have lots. Be specific on what you would like to change or add, and think about your voice. Who said something really specific that they know they want to do after they've listened to this? Ethan.
The part where I grew the leaves on my hat and hid under the bush, I'm going to tell the people what I was thinking when I was hiding under the bush.
Awesome. That's a perfect example. So he said that when he was hiding under the bush, remember his is about that pen war? He just was, in his story now, he just has what he looked like and that he was hiding under there, but now he's going to add what he was thinking. Can you imagine what that could sound like? What he was thinking while he was waiting there, the anticipation. Good. McKenna, or Michaela, what are you going to do?
I'm going to add how God was my best friend in the beginning of the story.
And with saying that he was your best friend, you could add some emotion in there about how you really felt about him. Maddie?
She also said, like, how Rocky liked Sam better and how Bud liked her better. So, and
emotion and feelings to our thinking to our stories, it makes them that much stronger. Okay, last one, and then we gotta get to work.
In this part, I was adding something that it was one of my catches in second grade. I'm gonna say what I was thinking when I caught the football for the touchdown.
Awesome. And when you write it, you don't have to say, I was thinking that this was cool, right? You could just add your thinking without saying, I was thinking, because your reader's going to know what you're talking about. When we get back for our share today, I'm going to be looking for some people that added some voice to their story and are willing to share it. When you get your writing, make sure that you read it over first. We talked about this. And look for places where you can add some of your thinking and your inner voice to the story. Everyone good? So since we have that one box, let's have the boys go first. I'm going to come around in conference with some of you while you're working today again. So be ready.